Before we jump into today's story, drop a quick comment to say hi, tell me your name, where you're watching from, and let me know if you're sticking around till the end. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. Alright, let's get into the story. My name is Raymond Carter, and if you're willing to listen, I want to tell you a story that changed not only the relationship between me and my daughter but also the way I came to understand what legacy truly means. I wasn't born rich. In fact, I was raised in a small two-bedroom home in Akron, Ohio, where the sound of machines from the nearby tire factory sang me to sleep more often than a lullaby ever did. My father was a line worker and my mother stitched clothes in the evenings after her day job at a grocery store. We didn't have the luxury of vacations, new cars, or fancy dinners. But what we did have was a belief that if you worked long enough and held onto your grit, life might just open a door. That door opened for me much later than I expected, and when it did, it changed the trajectory of my entire life. But this story isn't about me rising from dirt to dollars. This is about my daughter, Sophia, and the day she confessed something that broke my heart in the gentlest way imaginable. She thought her dreams were too expensive for me to handle. She thought her college education wasn't something I could afford. She never expected what I did next. Sophia had always been bright. From the time she was 12, she could dismantle arguments and debates with the cool, logical precision of a seasoned lawyer. She had the kind of curiosity that made teachers linger on her essays after the bell rang. By her junior year of high school, her mind was already set on attending one of the most prestigious universities in the country, Hawthorne University, a sprawling ivy-covered institution nestled in Massachusetts with a reputation that reached back a century. The problem? The tuition alone could buy a house in my hometown, and the thought of 4 years' worth of it felt terrifying even to me, a man who by that time had finally built a fortune. I hadn't told Sophia much about the company I founded. She knew, of course, that I did something in logistics and digital platforms, but to her, I was just Dad, the guy who grilled steaks on Sundays, fixed her car when the radiator gave out, and cleaned gutters before the first snowstorm. She didn't know that my small startup had grown into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise with clients speckled across the globe. I hadn't kept it from her out of secrecy, but out of fear. Fear that revealing how much money I truly had would turn her into someone who stopped valuing hard work. I wanted her to cherish effort, not entitlement. So she lived her life believing, quite earnestly, that my salary was comfortable, but not extravagant. And then came the evening that would change everything. It was late, the kitchen clock had just pushed past 11:15 p.m. I had been up working on quarterly reports, the kind of mind-numbing spreadsheets that can suck the soul out of most men. I found Sophia at the kitchen table, still hunched over her laptop, her eyes rimmed red from exhaustion. "Still awake?" I asked, pouring a glass of water. She looked up and smiled faintly. "Yeah, just trying to finalize my applications." I leaned over her shoulder, scanning the screen. The glowing university crest of Hawthorne blinked at me like a lighthouse. "You're applying?" I asked. "It doesn't matter," she said quietly, her voice just barely carrying across the table. "I don't think we can afford it anyway. Maybe I'll just go to the state university." "It's fine, Dad." "Really?" That small collection of words, casual, dismissive, protective, hit harder than any insult could have. "My girl," I whispered, my throat tightening, "do you really think I can't afford your education?" She paused, her eyes flickering with guilt. "Dad, you work so hard, but I see the bills, the maintenance, all those things around the house. I don't want to burden you." And that was it. That was the moment I decided. She wasn't going to carry the weight of money on her shoulders. No. She was going to know that her father believed in her so fiercely, so wholly, that the world itself would bend to her ambition. I was going to prove it in the most unforgettable way possible. The next morning, I called my assistant, Marianne. She was a sharp woman in her 40s who had been with me since the days my company operated out of a dusty warehouse. Marianne, I told her, get me in touch with the board of Hawthorne University. I want to make an offer they can't ignore. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then came her soft, knowing chuckle. What are you up to now, Mr. Carter? I don't just want to pay tuition, I said. I want to buy something lasting. Something that'll have Sophia's name on it long after she graduates. Within weeks, the plan was unfolding. I was in conversations with the board, reviewing assets, endowments, and potential naming opportunities. And then, through some stroke of fate, I learned that one of their oldest academic buildings, Prescott Hall, a towering red brick structure from the late 1800s, was in desperate need of renovation. The funding gap was enormous. I decided then, I would buy the building, endow it under Sophia Carter's name, and gift it back to the university. When that building stood tall and restored, students would walk through its arched doorways for another 100 years, all carrying her name above them. Sophia would never doubt for a second that she belonged there. Universities don't just hand over their heritage to anyone with a thick checkbook. That's something I learned the hard way in those first few meetings with the Board of Trustees at Hawthorne. When I arrived in their estate-like conference hall, dark mahogany tables, oil paintings of dead presidents of the university lining the corridor, there was an air of polite suspicion. The chair of the board, a silver-haired gentleman named Arthur Winslow, leaned forward, fingers laced tightly. Mr. Carter, he said, I've read about your logistics empire. Impressive growth, impressive scale. But forgive me, we're speaking about Prescott Hall, an institution that has stood for a century. Why this sudden interest? I smiled politely, but inside I was trembling. This wasn't a corporate merger. This was about my daughter. Because my daughter, I replied plainly, dreams of being here. And I won't have her doubt for a second that she belongs. The room was quiet. A few exchanged glances passed among the board members. Some smiled faintly at my sincerity, while others looked skeptical, as though they expected there had to be a hidden agenda. That was the thing about wealth, people always assumed there was an angle. But I had no angle, only a father's heart. I slid a folder across the table. Inside it lay a proposal, not just to fund the renovation but to fully endow the building, supply modern classrooms, labs, and digital spaces, and provide scholarships for underprivileged students in Sophia's name. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Winslow exhaled slowly, looking at me with something akin to reverence. You're proposing a legacy gift, he murmured. One that cements your daughter's name here, forever. That's exactly what I'm proposing, I said. Sophia Carter Hall. By the time she graduates, it will be the heart of this campus. The hardest part of this entire endeavor wasn't the millions I was about to spend, it was keeping it from Sophia. Every day, I'd pass her in the kitchen as she anxiously compared Hawthorne with the state university. Sometimes she'd mutter numbers about tuition. Sometimes she'd sigh, say she didn't want me working myself into an early grave. I wanted so badly to tell her. To grab her shoulders and say, you're already accepted in more ways than one. But secrets have their time. One evening, as she prepared her Hawthorne personal essay, she asked me a question that nearly broke my resolve. Dad, she whispered, do you ever regret not being able to get more, in life? Like, chances we can't afford? I looked into her young, uncertain eyes. Sophia, I've never regretted a single thing. Because everything I've worked for, everything I've built, it's for you. She smiled weakly, but I saw the disbelief in her eyes. That disbelief burned me alive. I knew then that the unveiling of my plan had to be perfect. The day I signed the donation agreement, I asked if I could walk through Prescott Hall alone, late at night. They agreed. So there I was, in a building that smelled of 100 winters, with cracked plaster walls and corridors that whispered with the footsteps of generations before me. I walked through the old library wing, the lecture hall where echoes bounced between ceiling beams, the tall arched entry where the light of moon splashed across worn stones. I closed my eyes, and I pictured Sophia walking there as a sophomore, clutching books, laughing with friends, gripping endless possibilities in her hands. Students passing under a carved sign, Sophia Carter Hall. For the first time in years, my eyes welled with tears. When I placed my signature on the papers later that week, I didn't feel like a businessman. I felt like a father fulfilling a promise I had once made to myself, that my daughter's dreams would not be contained by the ceilings that contained me. The unveiling ceremony was scheduled for the spring, just before decisions came out for new admits. But I couldn't wait that long to tell Sophia. So, one ordinary Sunday morning, as we sat at our worn oak dining table with coffee and pancakes between us, I slid an envelope toward her. "What's this?" she asked, frowning. "Open it," I said. My voice betrayed a tremor. She tore the wax seal carefully. Inside was an embossed letter on Hawthorne University stationery. Her eyes darted across the line that read, "We are proud to announce the forthcoming renovation and renaming of Prescott Hall, which will henceforth be endowed as Sophia Carter Hall in recognition of her name and legacy." At first, she didn't understand. She blinked at me, her lips parting but no words emerging. "Dad, what is this?" she whispered. "It's your hall," I said quietly. "By the time you step foot on that campus, it will bear your name. And not because I want the world to know me, but because I want the world to remember you." Tears filled her eyes, and for a long moment, our kitchen was silent except for the sound of her sobbing into my chest. "I thought you couldn't afford my tuition," she gasped through laughter tears. "But you bought a building?" I held her tighter than I had since she was a child. "No, Sophia," I whispered. "I bought your future." The summer slipped by faster than I expected. Before I knew it, we were unloading boxes from the back of my pickup truck onto the manicured lawns of Hawthorne University. The old clock tower loomed above us, its bells ringing noon as if to announce that my little girl was stepping into a new world. Sophia was nervous but glowing, her arms stacked with books and her hair tied back in that way she always did when she wanted to appear serious. She didn't say much, just kept glancing around at the sea of ivy-covered buildings, students bustling about with eager faces, and professors greeting each other with familiarity. Then she saw it, the newly restored Prescott Hall. Except it wasn't Prescott anymore. There, engraved in deep bronze above the wide-arched entrance, gleamed the words, "Sophia Carter Hall." She froze. Her steps slowed until she came to a complete stop in the middle of the walkway, bags dangling from her shoulders. Dozens of new students streamed around her, but she just stood there, one hand pressed to her mouth. "Dad," she whispered. "It's real." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. "Go on. Walk through your hall." As she climbed the stone steps, her hand brushed the engraved letters. For the first time in all my years of success, I felt as if nothing else I had ever built compared to this moment. By the end of her first week, the whispers had started. Students, curious and impressed, gathered around Sophia's dormitory, trying to piece together the mystery of why a hall had been named after a freshman. Some assumed she must have been the granddaughter of some wealthy alum. Others speculated she was royalty, though her modest second-hand sneakers and off-the-rack backpack told a different story. In the cafeteria, I overheard her talking to her new roommate on move-in day. "They think I'm someone important," Sophia said with a nervous laugh. "You are," I interjected from across the table. She looked at me, half reproachful, half beaming. "Dad, you have no idea what kind of attention this brings." "Attention fades," I told her. "But the hall will stand long after both of us are gone." Still, I realized that I had done more than just gift her a building. I had given her a narrative she would now have to carry. And that responsibility weighed on her more than any tuition bill ever could. Sophia's first semester wasn't the fairy tale I had envisioned. She was brilliant, yes. More than once, her professors praised her essays and her contributions in political philosophy classes. But the pressure of living up to the name that literally stood over an entire university building was becoming unbearable. One night, just before midterms, she called me with her voice trembling. "Dad, what if I fail? What if I can't live up to that?" That was her haul. I paused, listening closely to my daughter, my little girl who had once believed she was too expensive for my dreams, now believing that my dreams had become too heavy for her. "Sophia," I said, my voice steady, "that haul isn't there as proof of what the world expects of you. It's there as proof of how much I believe in you. You don't owe anyone perfection. You only owe yourself honesty and effort." She didn't reply right away. But when she finally did, her voice was calmer. "I'll try, Dad. I'll try." Months passed. By winter, Sophia found her rhythm. She led debates that drew large student audiences. She helped tutor struggling freshmen in her spare time inside the very study rooms of Sophia Carter Hall. Slowly, the whispers about her name transformed into admiration not for what her father had done, but for what she was doing herself. Walking through those renovated corridors, I often stepped back, unseen, just to watch her laugh with classmates, scrawl ideas on chalkboards, or lean thoughtfully by a window as snow drifted outside. The hall was more than brick and mortar now. It was an extension of her spirit, her place to stumble, to rise, to inspire. And each time I saw her there, I realized something profound. I had bought the building, yes, but she was the one breathing life into it. By the time Sophia entered her sophomore year, the university no longer whispered about her, it looked to her. Professors requested her insight during heated debates, club leaders asked for her collaboration, and freshmen, awed by the name Carter carved into their schedules for classes inside the hall, sheepishly asked her for guidance. But it wasn't easy for her. "Sometimes I feel like a fraud," she admitted one night as we walked along Hawthorne's cobblestone paths, leaves crunching underfoot. "People look at me like I've already achieved something great, but it's not me, Dad, it's you." I stopped walking and took hold of her shoulders. "No, Sophia. It's us. That hall was my gift. But what you do within it is your gift back to the world. And I'm already seeing it happen." She bit her lip, looking away. "I just want to deserve it." "You already do," I told her. "You just haven't realized it yet." The fight inside her wasn't against the expectations of others, it was against her own heart, unsure whether she would ever measure up. That battle would follow her years to come. Sophia threw herself into service work in her second year. She organized a scholarship program for underprivileged high school students from her hometown to tour Hawthorne, many of whom had never seen a university campus before. She arranged for the meetings to happen inside Sophia Carter Hall. The sight of wide-eyed high school juniors walking through the arched hallways, marveling at the classrooms, touched her deeply. One of them asked, "So, is this your hall? Like, named after you?" Sophia flushed pink. She had always been hesitant to directly admit it, but finally she nodded. "Yes. But it's not just mine. It's everyone's who dares to walk these halls and believe they belong here." That was the moment she began to change. The weight of her name was still there, but now she wore it differently, not as a burden but as a responsibility. Yet, as the years at Hawthorne rolled on, not everyone admired my daughter. Some sneered quietly behind her back, accusing her of privilege. They didn't see her working through the nights, poring over philosophy texts, or organizing fundraisers for the debate society. All they saw was her name gilded above an old building. One confrontation stood out. In her junior year, during a fiery debate competition, a competitor tried to undermine her. "You talk about fairness and opportunity, but your name is literally written on the hall our classmates walk into every day," he spat. Gasps rattled across the audience. Sophia froze, the burn of humiliation rising in her cheeks. For a second, I worried she might crumble. But then she lifted her chin, steadied her voice, and replied, "Yes. That hall bears my name. But I didn't choose it, my father did. And the truth is, a name on a wall doesn't guarantee wisdom, honor, or even respect. Those are things I still have to earn, just like everyone else. And I welcome the challenge." The room erupted in applause. I clapped harder than anyone. Watching her navigate those years, I saw something extraordinary unfold. Sophia was no longer the little girl doubting if her dreams cost too much. Nor was she the overwhelmed freshman standing in awe at the sight of her hall. She was becoming the kind of leader I had always hoped she'd be, not because she was handed power, but because she wrestled with responsibility and made it her own. Every time I walked past Sophia Carter Hall, with its sunlight glinting off fresh glass windows, filled with the hum of students building their futures, I realized something important. I had bought the bricks, the mortar, the restoration. But Sophia had built the legacy. And in some quiet way, she had saved me, too. Saved me from believing that money was the completion of a dream. She showed me it was only the foundation, what truly mattered was the soul you put into it. Senior year came like autumn wind, sharp, inevitable, and bittersweet. Sophia had grown into her name by then. She was captain of the debate team, a research assistant for one of Hawthorne's most respected professors, and the founder of a mentorship program run directly out of Sophia Carter Hall. Students no longer whispered about her legacy, they leaned on it, trusted her, and in many ways, believed in her because she believed in them first. But graduation lurked ahead, and with it, the looming question every senior asks, what next? One snowy evening, during her last winter break at home, she sat with me in the living room, fire crackling low. "Dad," she said softly, "I think I finally understand why you did it." "Why, then?" I asked. "Because you wanted me to carry something bigger than myself, something that forced me to grow up faster, to rise to it. You didn't buy me safety, you pushed me into responsibility." I leaned back in my chair, tears threatening the corners of my eyes. "I wanted you to know that there will never be a wall high enough, a gate heavy enough, or a price steep enough to keep you from belonging where you want to be." She reached across and took my hand. "You've given me more than I could ever repay." I squeezed her palm gently. "Then don't repay me. Pay it forward." Graduation day arrived beneath a clear May sky. Families filled the courtyard, camera shutters crackling like summer cicadas. Students in their gowns cheered, laughed, and threw their caps in rehearsed swings for the photographers circling the grounds. When Sophia's name was called, I thought my chest might burst. She strode confidently across the stage, tassel swaying at her cap, her diploma handed firmly into her palm. But the greater moment came later, when she was unexpectedly invited to give the student reflection speech, fittingly, inside Sophia Carter Hall itself. I stood at the back, leaning against the freshly restored walls, as my daughter stepped up to the podium. Her voice rang steady, strong. "I used to think this building was too big for me. Too heavy. Every stone whispered that I didn't belong here, that my name was carved larger than my courage. I thought a gift like this could crush me under the weight of expectations. But I've learned something over these 4 years. A name on a hall doesn't define a person, how you live, love, and give defines you. This hall may bear my name, but its heart belongs to everyone who walks these classrooms, questions the world, and dares to dream beyond what they think they can afford." She paused, her eyes finding mine at the back of the room. "And my father, the man who made this gift, taught me that legacy isn't about wealth. It's about belief. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And because of that, I will spend my life making sure others know they belong too. The room erupted in thunderous applause. My cheeks were wet before I even knew I was crying. The years after Sophia's graduation passed quickly. She went on to law school, driven by her love for debate and justice. But even as she carved her path, Sophia Carter Hall stood like a living monument, filled with students who never once knew my name, but who always knew hers. And that was the point. Every so often, I return to that campus. I sit quietly on a bench outside the hall, listening to the footsteps of students rushing in and out, their laughter an unbroken melody. Sometimes I catch a young freshman staring up at the sign as if to wonder, who is Carter? And I smile. Because it's not about me. It was never about me. It was about a girl who once thought her dreams were too expensive, and a father who decided to answer her doubts not with words, but with a legacy carved in stone. And if I leave this world tomorrow, I know this, long after I'm gone, long after Sophia has lived her life, students will still walk under that archway, past those words, Sophia Carter Hall. And maybe, just maybe, they'll feel what I felt the first day I signed those papers. Not pride. Not ownership. But love disguised as bricks, devotion disguised as mortar, and a father's heart disguised as an open door. My name is Raymond Carter. I am not a great man. I am not a genius. I am not a saint. I am only a father. And once upon a time, when my daughter thought I couldn't afford her future, I bought her a university building to remind her, she was always worth more than she believed.